Welcome to my June garden tour. Today is June 15th. I have a small garden in town with 3 raised beds, a Greenstalk tower planter, and a few pots. My goal is to maximize my small space with high intensity planting, and about 95% of my garden is grown from seed. I'm so excited to show you the progress so far. Let's start with my Greenstalk tower planter. It sits on the patio and I can see it from the dining room and living room windows. I've placed it here intentionally and filled it with beautiful things so that it will draw me out into the garden. It's also a great conversation starter when I have friends visit, and I put my most used herbs in it so I can step out and cut from it while I'm making dinner. In the Greenstalk, I have 2 types of strawberries. I had 7 berry basket pink strawberries last year, and because they're perennial, they'll continue to come back year after year. This year, because they did so well, I got 4 new plants. They're called Berri's Galore Pink. Both varieties are everbearing, so they'll produce a small crop all summer long. I've already noticed that my new plants are producing larger berries, so I'm excited to see how many berries they'll produce this summer. The top of the Greenstalk is perfect for strawberries because it keeps them safe from pests like slugs and snails, so the fruits don't have any damage. I'm also growing several types of flowers in the Greenstalk. My current favorite is a marigold mix called Happy Days. The pollinators are drawn to the bright color, and the scent is supposed to repel some pests. I'm proud of these because I saved the seeds from last year. These will always have a place in my garden. I'm growing tip-top Alaskan salmon nasturtiums for the first time this year. The flowers and the beautiful variegated leaves are edible. This is a must grow. The contrast between the flowers and leaves is very striking. This plant likes cooler weather, so as the temperatures heat up, I'll need to replace it with a heat-loving plant. Anywhere I've had extra space in the Greenstalk, I've tucked in zinnias. I love the cheeriness that they add to the garden. Butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds love them too. These zinnias will be shades of pink, red, and yellow. I can't wait to see them bloom. The last flower that I'm growing in the Greenstalk is willow-leaved sunflowers. They grow between 8 to 12 inches tall and only a few inches wide. I've tucked them in wherever I have extra space. I'll save the seeds to plant them again next year and give any extra seeds I harvest to my chickens. Another new plant I'm trying in the Greenstalk this year is a miniature tomato called Orange Hat. It's made for small spaces and only gets between 8 and 12 inches tall. It's already loaded with fruit and I can't wait to see what it tastes like. I'm also growing several herbs in the Greenstalk. I've cut and used fresh cilantro all spring. This cilantro has started to flower because of the heat, but the pollinators love it, so I'll leave it until it forms seeds. As you can see, I've planted zinnias underneath it. They'll take over when it dies back. I love cooking with basil. I've planted cinnamon and lemon basil. I'll use the fresh leaves to cook with and dry any extra I have to use as spices. I'll let them flower at the end of the summer for the pollinators. Here I have English lavender. I love the scent and I'm hoping to have enough to use in lotions or candles. This is a perennial, and so it came back from last year. I'm hoping that it'll continue on in my Greenstalk and return year after year. My most used herb is chives. I cut from it almost every week. It will continue to produce all summer long, and these chives are perennial, so they will overwinter and come back next year. This is a pot that I have on the back patio. I'm growing sweet potatoes for the first time. To add some color, I've planted mini zinnias in the middle. They flower in just 35 days. I've also added black-eyed Susan vine around the edges. This pot is a total experiment, so we'll see how it goes together. My main gardening space is my raised bed garden. I have 3 beds that are about 2 feet wide and 6 feet long each. My beds are very densely planted this year. I'm experimenting with companion planting and trying to maximize the harvest from my small space. In front of the beds, I have 2 flower pots. They're both planted with sugar star phlox in a mix of zinnias. I started with the phlox but had poor germination, so I added the zinnias later. I'm hoping to use these as cut flowers and make bouquets. Around the edges of the bed, I'm growing a variety of zinnias and marigolds. In the center, I have planted spinach that I started in March. It's about ready to come out, but it still hasn't gone to seed yet, so I'm pretty impressed. I'm hoping to save seeds from this variety because I know that it lasts long in the hot temperatures. In May, I planted this gray zucchini. In this bed, I also have carrots that I planted in March. These will come out soon. I'm not sure yet what to plant in their place. But the majority of this bed is my pepper plants. I have a Buena Mulata pepper, 2 jalapenos, 10 blazing banana peppers, and 8 sweet peppers. I started all of them from seed in February except the jalapeno plants. Underneath these peppers, I've planted a few carrots, beets, and turnips this spring. I planted these a few months ago and I'm hoping to pull them out soon. I also have a few nasturtiums tucked around the edge of this bed. Nasturtiums are supposed to be a trap crop for aphids, so I planted them next to the peppers to hopefully prevent aphids from getting on my pepper plants. The left bed is built up against our shed. It has a trellis for my vining crops. I'm growing several new varieties this year, including Minnesota midget cantaloupe, purple hyacinth bean, mini pumpkins, Cherokee black beans, pickling cucumbers, and Kentucky pole beans. All of these are new varieties for me, but I'm hoping that we'll have a huge harvest. In the right raised bed, my main crop is potatoes. I planted them in early March and will pull them out in the next 3 weeks or so. Yesterday, I pulled out a couple plants to see how big the potatoes have gotten, and they're not quite ready yet. When I remove the potatoes, I'll plant okra in their place. I also have a few herbs that I've direct sowed in this bed. I have a couple types of basil, dill around the edges. I've also tucked in a few zinnias, marigolds, and willow leaf sunflowers. I want this bed to be full of color in the middle of the summer. The back bed is new this year. In the spring, it was full of kale and greens. Now it has several tomato plants. The first tomato is my absolute favorite. It's called a blueberry tomato. It has cherry-sized tomatoes that are purple and red when they're ripe. And as you can see, this plant is absolutely loaded. It's always the first plant to produce fruit every season. These tomatoes are beautiful and delicious. This is a Dr. Witchy tomato. It will have a large yellow fruit. Up next is another favorite of mine called the Cherokee purple. As the name suggests, the tomatoes will be a dark reddish purple color. They have great, deep, rich flavor that works really well on its own, on a sandwich, or in salsas. Then we have a prolific pink variety called Mortgage Lifter. Next is the Climbing Triple Crop. It's a new variety for me this year, so we'll see how it does. Last, I have 2 Roma tomatoes. They're already loaded with fruit, and I'm really excited to see how much they produce. I'm hoping to use this fruit for canning. I've tucked in kale and nasturtiums under the tomatoes and have a few zinnias planted around the edges to draw pollinators. Behind the tomatoes is my favorite part of the garden. I'm growing mini sunflowers. They make the garden look so happy and bring me so much joy, and it's been awesome to see how the pollinators are loving them so far. This variety is called Sunspot Dwarf, and they're supposed to get about 3 feet tall. Behind my raised beds, I have 2 small pots. This one has a thornless blackberry plant. I've had it for 3 years and haven't had any fruit yet, so I'm hoping this year is the year. I've noticed that it's starting to set flowers, so hopefully it'll fruit soon. I also have a small planter and bird bath combo. It's underplanted with Happy Days marigolds currently. I'm hoping that it'll draw pollinators in, and the water will be a water source for pollinators and birds in the garden. The last part of my garden is my pollinator house. I'm so excited to see that the native bees have moved in this week. I can't wait to see what my little garden produces this summer.